our three families have in common that we have older kids who have gone through this, applying to college and helping them get scholarships and all this. And so I thought this would be great if the three of us could just sit down in the afternoon and share some of our insights from what we've learned. So I'm going to start sharing. I think some more people may add, which is fine. And if you have a question, you're welcome to put it in the chat. And Missy and Kim have sent me links that they're going to talk about, and I'll put those in the chat as well. And when we're done, I'll save that record so that I can share it with you. And I guess some of you are registered, some may not be. So if you're not, just send me your email so I can send you links and documents and all of that. So the reason we got started on this is that all of us have had people asking about college. And we have worked so hard, all of us, to help our children through high school, to be prepared to launch. And in our area, there are many wonderful opportunities. So we thought we could share with you some of our insights from being in kind of the Tennessee, Georgia area, and perhaps inspire some of our homeschooled students to either go to community college or four-year college. And we're hoping that this will also make college accessible, because my expertise is with UTC, which is local to many of us. And what we discovered is that your students can actually get through college with very little debt. And I like to share that with people because some of us, like Julie, have large families. We also do. We have 9 kids. There are some scholarships that are not known about as widely. So I'm just going to share about UTC. We'll start specific, and then we'll start growing more wider in our outlook. But at UTC, when you apply, it is a very simple application, and I recommend everyone to apply, even if their sites are in another school, just so they have something to compare it with. And you can usually start applying in September. So we decided to have this seminar early because if a student is interested in UTC, it's best if they can apply by mid-October. Then they have more opportunities for the scholarships at the first seating of the scholarship committee. And it takes about 2 weeks to hear back. And then if you accept, you actually can accept and then later unaccept if you want. But once you accept their offer, then you can immediately apply for scholarships. And the scholarship application is very simple. It's about a paragraph about your extracurricular activities. So a lot of my students in high school have been very reluctant to write tons and tons of essays for these scholarships. Some have liked it, some have not. But for the ones, even the ones who didn't like putting in the work, this was very doable. And then usually before Christmas, they let you know how much you have received from the university. So there's a combination of the HOPE, that's automatically, you're registered for that when you do your FAFSA. And then there are University of Tennessee scholarships. And these are mainly based on your ACT or SAT scores. So for example, the smallest scholarship is called the MOX scholarship, and it requires a 22 on the ACT or 1100 on the SAT. So this is a very doable amount for students. Some of you who have had your kids take tests, they have probably already gotten these kind of scores. But then there are larger scholarships that go with higher scores. And between those two, our experience has been that if our students live at home and accept those scholarships, they usually only lack about $500 in books per semester. So they have gotten jobs and have easily been able to cover that. So I just wanted to encourage you, if you are thinking, oh, college is just impossible, that's very possible for Tennessee residents. Now, for those in Georgia, Missy's going to tell you more about that, but we have had students who attended community college in Georgia for 2 years, and once you have 60 credits, you can transfer to UTC and be considered for in-state tuition. So that helps right there. And then there are transfer scholarships. They are about $2,000 a year, so they're a little smaller than the ones I'm telling you about, but they're based on grade point average and SAT scores. So it is, even for people in Georgia, UTC is a possibility. So, so that's just a little about that. One thing, Kim and I had a little pre-meeting, and we realized one thing that makes our job very easy is being part of an umbrella school, because the umbrella school takes your transcript or your grades every year that you report and creates a transcript, which is an official transcript for your colleges. So you can register with your school system and create your own transcript, which someone will talk about. But that umbrella school, which is usually only $100 a year and maybe $20 for each additional kid, really is worth it because it makes the paperwork for college and scholarships so easy. So I just want to put that idea out there. And the other thing that we've done with our students, because these scholarships are so dependent on test scores, we have them make their junior year include a class that we just call test prep. And every day they do 30 minutes of practice for either the ACT or the SAT. And the Khan Academy has an excellent SAT prep, but I also get those books that have sample tests in them. And I just do either half of an ACT section or a whole SAT. They tend to be 30 minutes. And I just have them do that every day. And it helps them learn the psychology of the test and get comfortable with coloring in the little circles. Just this kind of practice sharpens your students. And we do recommend starting early taking practice tests. Tell the students not to be stressed out. Just attend a test. The PSAT is offered in your local high schools, and many high schools will welcome you. It's usually about $20 to participate, but it's a very reasonable price. Chat State has practice ACTs that they call a residual, and they're only $15. So that's a fun practice, at least from the mom's point of view. And then you can also just register and take one with all the other students. Most of our students started at the end of 10th grade, but Missy had told me that in Georgia, it's good to do it for 9th grade because testing is mandatory in her state. So it's just, tell them not to be stressed out about it, just do it, learn how to take a test. And then as they get closer to applying for college, the tests are going to be more important. But what we've noticed is all of our kids increased their scores just by taking the test. Most took it 3 or 4 times. So just if you keep that in the back of your mind, COVID has changed a lot, partly because the tests were canceled. So Kim may talk a little bit about that, but these are just ways that your students can position themselves for a very accessible education. So that's just one example. I'm going to pass the baton to Kim, and she's going to talk a little bit about Chat State and some other insights.
My kids have all, well, the youngest one, he just informed me last night that yes, he is going to go to Chat State. My children have a thing about not feeling that since they were homeschooled, even though all of them went to, I teach drama at Hilger, higher learning. And so they did go to a couple classes, each one of them at Hilger. So they had an idea of how classrooms work, but they were worried that they wouldn't be able to make it in a classroom. I don't know why, because they can all talk your ears off. But Ashley, my oldest, was worried, and Avery, my middle one, was worried. He went to something that I'll talk about here in a second with the Tennessee Promise that made him feel better about it, but they canceled that for this year when Adam would have been trying to qualifying for the Tennessee Promise. So he didn't get to go, and he's always been nervous. It's completely unfounded, let me tell you. It really is. But they don't know that, and they have to know that. So, so they've all gone to Chat State, and it's been a pretty good experience for them. I would recommend Chat State if your child feels like my kids did, and that they're just not sure how they'll do in a classroom setting. My daughter told me that community colleges were actually created as a 13th and 14th high school year, basically. So she said one of her complaints about it was that it did seem to still kind of feel like high school. in a certain sense. And you have a lot of transient students, like students who come and go, and a lot of students who are of different ages. You know, she told me about classes that she had that had, you know, 50 and 60-year-olds in the class with her. And so she did not love that about Chet State, and she didn't love their advisors, like compared, like my middle kid has not gone to anywhere but Chet State so far, so he doesn't have an opinion on this, but she does. She said the advising was better at UTC. But she also agreed that college, I mean, it's kind of what you make of it. You get out of it what you put into it. And so sometimes at Chet State, you have to put a little fight into it to get stuff out. Like she and I remember that we were like really, everything was so different. You know, I hadn't gone to college in 20 something years. And so it's different now than it was when I went to college. And, you know, I remember going over to help her sign in and sign up for college and apply and, you know, go over and talk to the financial aid office, for instance. And there are people there that are really great. There are. And she found a financial aid girl who really, really knew her stuff. And so she always went to that girl and tried to get in with her if she ever had a question about anything. And she found professors that she loved there at Chet State. So it is one way that you can reduce costs of college even further. The thing that you do is you like, they don't cost as much as like UTC, for instance, but you also kind of sometimes give up scholarships that may have been renewable, that if you'd gone to UTC when you were a freshman, you would have been able to get. But when you are a transfer student, you don't have really those same opportunities. Mostly like at UTC, it's once you get beyond the freshman year, scholarships kind of fall off a little bit, and they're mostly like department scholarships and things like that. Would you agree with that, Joyce? Yeah. So the thing about Chet State, being at Chet State, they do have, I mean, yes, they have students that come in and out, and students who get there and then decide that that's not for them. College isn't for them. They want to go to TCAT, or that college isn't for them at all, and so they don't. Or people who decided that like 15 years ago, and then they decided, well, maybe I should have gone to college, and they go back. You do have there's a lot more diversity that way, I think. But Chet State also has things like, they have a multicultural center, and they have study abroad programs, just like any other school. One of my daughter's favorite teachers, Dr. Douglas, and she missed this opportunity, and she's always regretted it. And I can't remember why she missed it now, but she missed it. It wasn't like she just didn't do it. She missed it for some other reason. Dr. Douglas went to Scotland, took a group to Scotland, and she would have loved to have done that. But once you graduate and, once you've been there, you can usually go back and still join some of those things. They also have, she said they have great student life things there. They have like cultural days, and they have free merch, with those things, and there are trips that you can take, and there are dances that they actually have. And one time she came running in the house. It was like, I don't know, she'd gone to her 8 o'clock class. She came running in the house. It was 9 in the morning. She said, "Quick, help me put some makeup on. I'm going back in costume." I'm like, okay. It was Halloween, I think. So she put took 30 minutes and put a costume on and went back to school in costume. And I think she won a prize, actually. But, so Chet State is not a bad place to go. It's not as bad as a lot of people might say that it is. And a lot of students actually go. I was kind of dumbfounded when Ashley was planning to go there. She had a friend who went to GPS, and we went to this girl's graduation, and she was, I was just kind of amazed, because they got up and as they announced students going across the stage to get their diploma, they told you where they were going to go to school. And there were a bunch, I mean, like a lot, really a lot, a great percentage of kids from GPS who were going to start at Chet State. So I think it is a good place to start. I think that it maybe is, if you have a student who's a little leery of school, that it's a good place to get their feet wet. and then she transferred to UTC, and she loved UTC just as much. So they have these pathways. That's one of the differences from when we were all in school, because these days schools seem to be trying to come up with reasons why school is so expensive now, because it is truly, truly expensive. And so they come up with ways to keep that expense down. And one of the ways that Chat State, that schools of that nature have come up with, beyond Tennessee Promise, which I'll get to in a second, is that they follow these pathways. And you can go on Chat State's website and look in the admissions section and find information on these pathways. But like, there were classes that Ashley wanted to take when she was at Chat State that she kind of had to fight for. She wanted to take German, but German was not in her pathway that she should take to be able to transfer to another school in the pathway, the Tennessee pathway system. And it's all kind of complicated, so you really need to pay attention when the advisor is talking, and make sure you go to orientation and stuff like that, because it will talk to you about all that stuff. And you'll need to have like a meeting before, at least one meeting with your advisor, things like that. But the pathways are geared, depending on what your child is majoring in, it's geared to give them like automatic transfer to several colleges of their choice in the state of Tennessee. And so there are some private, some public, but that's what that Tennessee Pathways thing is all about. They make your child feel like they need to know, and when I say they, I don't mean Chat State, I think it's like kind of across the board, because they're trying to keep the costs down. They're trying to keep you from having a fifth senior, being a fifth-year senior, for instance. So they speak in these terms that kind of make you feel like your child needs to know when they're 18 what they want to do for the rest of their lives. And that causes stress in the kid. That's been my experience with it. So just tell your kid, just calm down. It'll be okay. You don't have to know at the age of 17 or 18 what you want to do forever. There are kids who do know, but there are kids who don't too, and that's okay also. So you can still do just gen ed stuff at Chat State. That's great. So let me talk to you for just a minute about the Tennessee Promise. I hate to deflate any bubbles that you may have, but Tennessee Promise does not provide free college. They say that it does, but the truth is that it is what they call a last dollar scholarship. So they are going to apply every scholarship that your child has, every grant that your child gets. It is you have to fill out the FAFSA, and the FAFSA opened 3 days ago. It opened on October 1st. And the way that my husband and I found out about this is we went to Shoney's before my daughter applied for school, and had this waitress, and she was young and she was in school, and she told us, I don't know, I can't even remember what the conversation was that got us to the point where she was telling us, well, my friends and I, we like wait the night before it opens. And that was back when it opened on February 1st. We on January 31st, we're up late at night, and we all hop on our computers, and we are she's like, I make sure I'm among the first to apply so I get more money. And that's how the FAFSA and the Pell Grant and things like that work. If you wait until February at this point to apply for the FAFSA, then you're not going to get as much money as somebody who did it on October 1st. That's just the way it is. But back to Tennessee Promise. The Tennessee Promise is going to wait until the school applies your Hope Scholarship if you get it. And the only way to get it as a homeschooler is to have a 21 on the ACT, or in Tennessee. Missy may have different things to tell you about the Georgia Hope, but in Tennessee, if you're a homeschooler, you are only allowed to get it. In fact, I think in Georgia, it might be the opposite of this. a 21 on the ACT or the SAT equivalent, which is something around like a 1060, I think. And so you have to have one of those two test scores, and that is the only way that you become eligible as a homeschooler for the Hope Scholarship. The Tennessee scholarship is different. You don't have to have, they don't have that test score thing, but they do make you jump through a lot of hoops. So the Tennessee Promise, you can't apply until you're a senior. It is open right now. And it is open, the deadline is November 2nd. So you have to have it all filled out, but literally it's like 4 questions. It's not hard to fill out, or it was when I filled it out for Adam last year. For the Hope Scholarship, if your child, let's say they don't get that 21 on the ACT, they have 16 months after they graduate to continue to try to take the test and get a 21. Or if they just want to take a gap year, they have 16 months before they lose all hope of the Hope Scholarship. For the Tennessee Promise, they want you to start school the fall after you graduate. There was a thing this year, and I'm going to tell you this, it's too late this year if you have a senior to do this, if your senior isn't in school. I mean, if you're college student, your freshman has not gone to college yet in the fall. For this year only, until something happens with COVID-19 again that causes tests to continue to be canceled, the Hope Scholarship allowed students to go ahead and go to school even if they had not achieved eligibility, and to be still able to, like that test score thing, to still be able to work to gain eligibility through the end of whatever the institution where they were going said, this is the last day of classes for the fall semester. And they would allow the residual tests at the school to count as that test score. Usually they do not. But who knows? So you need to keep abreast of it. And back when my daughter went to school, I could call the Hope Scholarship people, and I actually talked to the guy who was in charge, because I honestly don't think they had anybody else working there yet. But now you can easily get somebody on the phone to talk to you about requirements for the Hope Scholarship or the Tennessee Promise. They're very open, and don't try to trick you into anything or anything like that, about giving you information. I would caution you about the Hope Scholarship, because if your child decides to take a gap year, but then they enroll somewhere, and at the time I was told that if they even enrolled in like GED courses to get their GED, then it could make them ineligible for the Hope Scholarship. And I will tell you, the Hope in particular, they are very caught on their words, and what they say goes. So when they say enroll, they don't mean that you can't apply to the school. What they mean is that you cannot enroll in classes and attend the first class. If your child even enrolls in classes, I believe, I would call and check on this, don't take my word for it, but if your child enrolls, what I was told is that if your child enrolls in classes, but they don't ever sit their backside in that seat, and they're not counted as being there the first day of class, then they're technically not enrolled. But I wouldn't bet my life on it. I wouldn't bet my money, my Hope Scholarship, on that. So while you can apply, you can't be enrolled in the class. So going back, that's the Hope Scholarship. Going back to the Tennessee Promise Scholarship, they have kind of those same enrollment things. That they want your child in class the first day of school, or at least the first week. So if they decide, I'm going to take Spanish this semester, oops, no, I'm not. I'm going to switch that from Spanish to, like, I don't know, a science class. But they missed the first day of the science class, but they're there the second day, they need to make sure that the teacher marks them enrolled in the class, or they could lose scholarships over it. Back to what the Tennessee Promise is, it is a last dollar scholarship. If if tuition is $2,000 and your child gets a $1,000 Pell Grant and the Hope Scholarship, and the Hope Scholarship pays the other $1,000, you can get money back from the Hope Scholarship for books. But if that whole $2,000 tuition is covered by your Pell Grant and your Hope Scholarship, you will not get a dime from the Tennessee Promise. Not one dime. If, however, you only get a $500 Pell Grant, but $1,000 from the Hope Scholarship, and there's still $500 sitting out there, that's when the Tennessee Promise will pick up, and they will pay that $500. But then you're either going to have to pay for books yourselves, or like through money that you've earned or whatever, or you'll have to take out loans for that, like a student loan for that. And that is the truth about the Tennessee Promise. My middle son took his promise, and I think that over the course of the 5 semesters that he's been there, the most the Tennessee Promise scholarship has ever paid out for him is like $215. I think might have been 115. But that is, and a lot of people come out of the Hope Scholarship, the Tennessee Promise Scholarship meetings going, what? What do you mean? What does that mean? Last dollar scholarship. That's what that means. They're going to use everything except your loans first. And then if there's something left over, they will pay that, but they do not pay books. They do not pay for fees, a lot of the fees. And there are some, you have to be careful about online courses. Of course, now everybody's in an online course, and I'm not exactly sure how they're working that out. But at the time, before COVID-19 came along, there were some kinds of online courses that they would not pay for, that the Tennessee Promise would not pay for. The Tennessee Promise can, in some cases, and I'm not entirely sure about where you find the information on this, except I heard it from Pam Trainer, who is the TD, the technical director in the theater on Chat State's campus, that the Tennessee Promise will actually sometimes, in some cases, I think it has to do with being a very good student, like a 4.0 kind of student. It can extend beyond the 2 years. It can extend into transferring to a 4-year college. The program that my older son went to, and okay, he wasn't good in math, all right? None of my kids are good in math because I wasn't good in math. And so we just dealt, okay? I'll be honest. We weren't great in math. But if your child gets below a 19 on math or reading on the ACT or the equivalent, or below an 18 in the English section, then they qualify for what the Tennessee Promise calls their bridge program. They canceled their bridge program this past summer, which was unfortunate because I feel like a lot of kids missed out on that right there. The bridge program is like the best program out there for all kids should have the bridge program before they go into school, honestly, because it gives, technically it's supposed to be like at the school where you're going, but my son actually ended up having to take it at Cleveland State. So he kind of missed out a little bit on like kind of that cohort feeling of the people going into his classes, people that he could see familiar faces on campus. But still, what they're trying to do is it's like a 3-week class. You go every day for 3 weeks, and they address any deficiencies and actually give you tests that try to get you be above. They do subject tests is what they do to try to get you above that 18 or 19. But for my son, again, it was like the knowledge that he could sit in what was essentially a college class and do well in it, that actually where the benefit was for him. And so he knew going into Chat State, he's like, I got this. It's fine. I'm fine. I am now that I took the bridge program. So all of this stuff is kind of subject to change to COVID-19 like everything else is. But that's the basics as I know it. And you can find all of this stuff by calling the Tennessee Promise. Sometimes they'll refer you back to the school's financial aid department. Call the financial aid department. You can go onto Chat State's campus and visit the financial aid department, but you have to fill out a form and show it to them at the gate and stuff like that. Wear a mask, wrap yourself in bubble wrap, stuff like that. But uh, it there are students for whom it pays out. Students who maybe didn't get the FAFSA done in time to get a good Pell Grant, for instance, or that don't qualify for the Pell Grant. Students who didn't know if they wanted to go to college, so they're kind of late getting things in, and they will pay. It's not that they won't pay, it's that most people that I've talked to, they don't pay a lot for. So, and they do not pay for books, which I feel is very unfortunate. If your child gets the Hope Scholarship, then they will give you leftover Hope Scholarship funds from that semester to help you pay for books. But then trust me when I say that you will not be getting the Tennessee Scholarship if you're getting money back from the Hope Scholarship. So, I mean, you'll have them both. You'll still have them both, or the child will still have them both. But the Tennessee Promise would not pay out if the Hope is giving you money back, because they wait for any grants, any other scholarships, private scholarships. Adam just found out that he got a pretty good private scholarship. And the Tennessee Promise would wait for all those scholarships to be applied, and before they, if there was a deficiency in paying tuition, then they would pay for it, but they're not going to give you any kind of refund for books or anything, or living expenses or anything like that. So,
Kim, I wanted to add something in here.
yeah.
Jennifer just shared that Chat State accepted her son in dual enrollment this year without having to do that residual ACT.
Right.
And that may be helpful to some people to know.
Yeah.
Dual enrollment is something that you can do during high school, and you get both high school and college credit for it. And in Tennessee, and I believe in Georgia too, there are grants that will pay for the cost. And it covers most of it at community colleges, or like Bryan College prices there so that it's the same as what the grant is. So those dual enrollment grants are really useful in your senior year or junior year for some kids. And it can help with your application for scholarships later. But also in the state of Tennessee, there is a General Merit Assembly Scholarship for students who have taken 4 dual enrollment courses. So they get another like $1,500 if they had a certain grade point average in those. And there's one other way to get those, and that's to go to the governor's school, which I think, Kim, you were going to tell us about.
Oh, yes. The Tennessee Governor's, well, okay. So I think there's more than one governor's school. I was going to talk about this Governor's School of the Arts.
Okay. I think that is included.
Is it? I don't know much about the other governor's school, but there is something called the Tennessee Governor's School of the Arts. It is for rising 11th graders and rising 12th graders. And you apply, you have to pay. It's quite expensive. However, they have financial aid. They do have financial aid. And that's, on a need basis, and kind of, I think it's kind of also first come, first serve kind of basis. But it's something great to put on your college application as something that you've been part of. It can give you access to scholarships that you might not have otherwise been able to have access, like state scholarships that you might not otherwise have had access to. It's tough to get in. Like my daughter auditioned for dance, and she's pretty good actually, but she was actually selected at first as an alternate, and then she didn't actually go to the governor's school because by the time they said, hey, we've had an opening here, she had other plans that she could not break for the summertime. So she elected not to go, but it's 3 weeks where they live on campus at MTSU, I believe. And the girl who went, there was another girl from Chattanooga Ballet who went, and she very much enjoyed herself and felt like she came back a better dancer. But it's you have to audition in the School of the Arts. You have to audition, and they have dance, they have music, like instrumental music, they have vocal music and choir, they have drama, they have art, like visual art, and a couple other things, actually, I think. So if your child is particularly gifted in those things and they're a rising 11th grader or a rising 12th grader, then you might want to look into the Tennessee Governor's School of the Arts. On on the Tennessee Hope website, which is like one big website that covers like everything. Under financial aid, you'll find a whole list of like the merit scholarship that Joyce mentioned, but you'll also find like they just give you, here's what the eligibility is, here's how it pays, here's how you lose it. And there's like the Tennessee Student Assistance Award, which is for half to full-time students. You have to complete the FAFSA. You have to be a Tennessee resident. Your expected family contribution would be like $3,500 or less, and that's determined by the FAFSA. You have to be enrolled in a Tennessee school. You have to maintain an satisfactory academic progress, and not be in default on any loans, like student loans or a refund of a grant. And you have to be an undergraduate student, so you have to not have earned your baccalaureate degree yet. But I don't know how this happened. We were surprised, but Ashley got that award like one time. So, and here's something else I want to tell you about. Verification. Oh my Lord, verification. Verification is something that they do, and I'm not clear who chooses you or how you're chosen. They claim it's random, except my children have been chosen every single semester that they have gone to school. And I have a strange feeling that it's kids who still live at home when they go to school. Joyce, have your kids all been chosen for verification like every
Just
single
once.
Just
One
one?
out of 8.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm really mad.
Unfair.
It is, because my kids have been chosen for that verification every single solitary year.
Wow.
Both semesters, every year. Both kids. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Here's the way you'll find out if you've been chosen. Your financial aid will get held up. The kid will be like, I don't understand why this is saying I still haven't paid for school. It's the first day of school. Everybody should have paid. Then they call the financial aid department or go to the financial aid department and they go, oh, you haven't filled out your verification form. Okay, I didn't know I had to fill it out till just now. Well, just go fill that form out and everything will be fine. So you kind of got to keep your eye on your financial aid, and they'll give you a list. This is the first thing you got to tick off, and the second thing you got to tick off, and right there, verification. And I mean, it's not a big deal. They just want to know where everybody lives and who all's in the family, but it's a deal. And they say it's random. I don't think so. I don't think it's all that random, honestly, but yeah.
This is one thing that Kim and I talked about. It is wise to help your kids navigate this. You will find that most of your admission specialists want to deal just one-on-one with your student. But as a wise mother, keep tabs on what's going on, because sometimes there are things that are just beyond an 18-year-old to figure out. And it's okay for you to be involved. I teach freshmen at UTC, and I'm often thinking, if only I could talk to their parents.
Yeah.
Make sure, yes, that they were doing what they're supposed to do. So I get the vibe from just about everybody on campus that parents are supposed to just be totally uninvolved. But I want to give everyone permission to be involved. This is an important step for your children towards launching. So
I'll tell you something that happened to me and my older son, Avery, at Chat State. He had, we went to get him signed up for his very first classes, and I went with him. And we went to his advisor's office. And literally, his advisor, they were choosing classes, and I just had a question about math class. My question was, does he have to do that this semester? That's all I wanted to ask. So the advisor is like looking at him over here. And I said, excuse me, can I ask a question? And he literally went like this. And he's still looking at my son. He went, are you an adult? And Avery was like, yeah. All right. Well, I just wanted to let you know that I don't talk to moms like this. And I was shocked. And I kept my mouth shut. I really wanted to tell this man off. I did. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And I interrupted him at some point and I said, all I wanted to ask was a simple question, which was, does he have to take a math class in the first semester? No. And then he just turned right back to Avery. I mean, some of them are, you have to fight for what you want sometimes. You do.
Yes.
And I told Avery, the only reason that I did not tell that man where he could get off, I'd have been nice. I wouldn't have used foul language, mostly. I wouldn't have used foul language. But I did want to tell him, you know what? You don't have to act like that. I just had a simple question. Why do you have to act like that? And just confront him. So the only reason I didn't do that was because of you, and he's your advisor, and I don't want to set up a bad situation. But beware, there are mean people everywhere.
Yes.
Especially in
And
college.
and it's hard for homeschool moms to get past this. So if you are forewarned, you're forearmed. So, but I want to hear from Missy now about Georgia. All right. So tell us your experience.
Do we have any people here from Georgia?
Even if we don't, we may who
Okay.
ask to watch it later. So this is really valuable information.
Not to mention their kids might actually decide they want to go to a school in Georgia.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, with Georgia, Georgia has a university system. So there's 159 counties and 26 schools that they're different schools. Some are community. I think there's 9 community schools and so many are state schools and, you know, different ones, but there's 26 altogether. So in the Georgia system, if you go to one of those schools, whether it's dual enrollment or whatever, most of your credits will transfer. So that's kind of something that's with Georgia. Georgia, I would recommend dual enrollment. We had very good experience with dual enrollment. And if the college that you're going to, a lot of them will let those credits transfer, even if they're outside of the state of Georgia. Others will treat those credits as AP kind of courses. So either way, you're getting a good outcome. For Georgia, they're going to want transcripts. I've found that all the schools, all the colleges want transcripts. For Georgia, of course, you don't need an umbrella school. You sign up through the state with an intent to homeschool. And there's a list of classes that you have to take to graduate. There's like 4 English, 4 math, 4 science, 3 history, and within those credits, there's like for instance, each one of those subjects are broken down so that if you have like history, within those 3 history, half a semester has to be a government, half a semester, has to be economics. And so first you have to follow those requirements. They're not going to take you seriously if you don't have those requirements. And then you're going to make your transcripts. There's a lot of templates out there that you can get and fill in. And you name your school, you find a transcript template and put the information in there. You'll want to, some schools will ask you for a school profile. If they ask for that, there are templates for that as well, but the school profile kind of breaks down your schools, how your school handles all different subjects, where your school is located, the demographics kind of thing of your school, the philosophy of your school, what your school offers. When we did our school profile, we included a lot of the different kind of activities that we could do as homeschoolers, stuff like archery and swimming and stuff like that, to show that our school had availability of a lot of different things. So anyway, they may also ask for course descriptions, and they're going to want to know if your the grades that you're given are weighted or unweighted. We did everything unweighted, but if you most schools like weighted, especially if you're not going to a community college. But if you go to a different type of college, they like the weighted scores. The weighted GPA. But we just did the unweighted GPA. So if you're going to do weighted, that's going to be giving more credit for college courses or AP kind of courses or Ivy courses, those kind of things. Basically what we did, we had one son that went to Northwestern, and he took their entrance. They weren't real hard with the transcripts and all that stuff. They just had him take an entrance test. He did very well on that, and so they got him going with dual enrollment there, and he transitioned from dual enrollment into going to their school for a diploma. Then we had our next child went to Dalton State, and she was interested in their nursing program, and so her dual enrollment actually those credits were used towards her nursing, and it helped her get into the nursing program because of those already having been taken. And then my third one, he actually applied for a variety of different schools, and I think he put in probably about 40 applications, which there's a cool thing. I don't know if it's in Tennessee, but in Georgia, you can actually, if you financially qualify, you can go to a public school counselor and get a school, a waiver that they provide. And this waiver will pay for ACT, SAT fees. It'll pay for, so that you can send those scores to a number of schools. I wrote some notes on the waivers here. They'll give you waivers for application fees to colleges. So if you qualify with that, going to one of the Georgia counselors, and you just have to call around to a school in your area and see who is willing to speak to you, and they will ask for your income tax return, and if you qualify, then they will give you those waivers and you won't have to pay for all those tests.
I think that they'll do that in Tennessee too,
Okay.
that you can get waivers in Tennessee.
Okay. Cool. That's cool. I was also going to talk about, when you were talking about scholarships and stuff like that, there's basically 3 types of schools, as my son would put them in order. He says there's your safety schools, your likely schools, and your reach schools. And if you're going to a safety school, there is a high acceptance rate, but they may not cover everything. Like for instance, like Lee, he got a scholarship at Lee, but they didn't cover, the scholarship they offered was just a small scholarship. Where some of the Ivy schools or reach schools, they have a low acceptance rate, but they also, a lot of them have like where if you look at how they qualify people, you're going to look at schools that have a 0 loan package, need blind to the admission process, and you want them to guarantee to meet all demonstrated need. So if you do that, you can actually go to a school that is very expensive but not have to pay. Then also there are other programs and scholarships out there. One is the college prep program that's available in all states. And that program has 42 schools that are participate with it, and they work with the Quest. It's the Quest Bridge college prep program. And what happens with that? If you become one of their, if your grades are good and your scores are good, then they will allow you to apply for all of the colleges. There's 42 of them, and they'll waive all the fees. You can apply for those without any fees. Then there's the merit scholarship, which you guys were talking about a little bit with the in the junior year. You can only do the merit scholarship in October. You take the PSAT in October, and if you score very well, it's only about $20, like you guys were saying. If you score very well, then there's a scholarship with that. And in the dual enrollment, make sure if you do dual enroll in Georgia that you don't use, they will sign you up for dual enrollment fee, a scholarship for just dual enrollment, so that you're not using any of your HOPE funds before you actually graduate. So then when you graduate, your HOPE funds are still there. And Georgia does HOPE differently than Tennessee. You have to actually go to college or prove yourself in the college atmosphere first, and then the HOPE is retro. So if you dual enroll, you've already got those credits and you've already proven yourself, and by the time that you graduate, then you're able to go straight into using your HOPE funds. And Georgia also does, of course, the Pell Grants as well. Our children use those as well, and they help pay for any of the extra funds that HOPE didn't pay for. So that's kind of like an overview for us. Matthew had to take some SAT subject tests as well for the college, some of the colleges he applied to. And that's basically, there's 20 subject tests that the SAT offers. If you're a homeschool student applying to some of these colleges, then you have 2 or 3 that they're going to ask for, and you can take 3 at a time. They're harder than the regular SAT or ACT because they're going to be specific to subject. And so you want to take the subject that you're really good. They'll probably want a math, a English, and some type of science. But usually it's a math and an English and a third one. And the school wants to look at that. So Matthew chose a math. You got to be specific. So, because that's why there's 20 of them. He chose like an algebra 2, a biology, and some type of English. I don't remember which one it was. And then he took those and submitted them to the college that was asking for them. It's kind of a further thing that they may ask for, especially with homeschool students, just to kind of gauge where you are as far as a student. Another thing I would recommend is beefing up your college application with activities. They're looking for what you're interested in, but they don't want you to be too busy. They get worried if there's too much going on, but they want to see some volunteer activities in an area that you're very passionate in. They want to see some community service. Let's see, they also want some experience with leadership, communication, and writing skills. Those all look really, really good on the application going forward. So,
yep. I would caution about going to the schools. Like my daughter and I went to, before she even graduated, we went to just like a college 101, how to get in to college course at a school that was within, a 60-mile radius of Chattanooga, a private school, big fancy private school. And I used to work there, and I told her, I worked in the bookstore. I was the trade book manager in the bookstore there. And I said, don't fall in love with this school because it looks like Hogwarts. And it does. It really looks like Hogwarts because it really was built to after Oxford in England. So it looks like, and they even have people wearing gowns. They have, it's the gownsmen. Um, and their gowns are the ones that are proudest of the gowns that they have gowns that are in tatters. So it's kind of an old tradition there. And what we learned when we went to the financial aid seminar was that they would find, now what Missy's talking about is like Ivy League. What she talked about a minute ago was Ivy League schools. This is not necessarily an Ivy League school, but what they did was they would find you the money to go to school there, and it was expensive. Back then it was like $43,000, and they guaranteed that to incoming freshmen for 4 years, the ones who were entering in 2012. And by now, I checked, I can't remember, but it's like up in like the $50,000 or $60,000 a year range now. Because they seemed to raise the cost of tuition like $3,000 every year for incoming freshmen, but then they would guarantee whatever you came in at for 4 years. But what we noticed was that for that school, they were definitely going to max out your student loans before, like that was part of their aid package. So when they said they were going to find money for you for school, they were going to max out your student loans, and for that school. And there are other schools out there who don't, I mean, this is a very highly reputable school, but there are some schools out there that are not highly reputable. And a lot of it are some of the ones that you see advertising on television, commercials on TV, DeVry University. And I won't say that DeVry University is like that because I don't really know, but I'm just saying be careful, because what I have found over the course of trying to get 3 kids into school is going to school is a money-making machine. It is. It makes money for the universities. And you have to be careful about how you want to spend that money. So your kid has like anywhere from $5,500 to $12,500 that they can get through student loans per year, up to $57,500 over the course of 4 years. So you have to ask yourself, and you have to make sure your student understands that if they're going to use that much money, they're going to have to pay that much money back. And I'm not 100% sure that it's possible to do that with like an English degree. Maybe like a pre-med, if you're going to become a doctor, that won't be a problem for you. And believe me, because I went to graduate school to get a master's degree in English. I didn't finish it, but I went. And I didn't finish it because I asked myself, do I really feel like I'm doing something that's going to make me able to pay that money back? And I didn't at the time. So that's a question that my daughter asked herself about this school, because she left there going, I want to go here. Oh my gosh, it looks like Hogwarts. I said, I told you it looks like Hogwarts. Don't fall in love with it. And then we started getting like postcards from them. And on the postcards, did it say, we're going to make sure that your kid gets a great education and that they are going to be able to pay this money back, right? No, these cards all said, we have 13,000 acres for your kid to explore. And, on the back, they said, by the way, we also have school. Okay. So she said, I don't think that's really a good thing. I said, no, not really, because what this school, I know, because I work there, what this school is known for is like creative writing degrees and art degrees at the time. And I think they're a little bit farther beyond that now. But at the time that I worked there, their big thing was creative writing and art. And unfortunately, you have to work real hard if you have an art degree, I feel. to be able to make a lot of money in it. And I say that with a kid who probably is going to get an art degree. My youngest, he's probably going to get an art degree. But I'm going to tell him, yes, but what kind of art degree? Is it going to be graphic design? Is it going to be animation art? What is it that you want to do? Because if you get a loan, you got to make sure you're able to pay the money back. Because today, it seems like having a bachelor's degree is tantamount to what having a high school diploma was back when Joyce and Missy and I were going to college, you know. So, you know, using that, extrapolating from that, you can imagine that maybe in another 10 or 15 years, having a master's degree is going to be kind of the same thing as what it was to get a bachelor's degree back when I was in school. So you kind of got to follow the money a little bit and watch for those predatory lending types of things. You're going to need to tell your kid to stay away from the unsubsidized loans if they can at all costs. And you're probably going to want to not take all those, even one of those wonderful loans that they have out there for parents, because most of those are unsubsidized and you have to start paying it back now. So be real careful when you're talking about loans. When I first went to college, they handed me a pen and said, okay, you have this much from the Pell Grant, you have this much from this, you get a departmental scholarship for $1,500 per semester, and this is what your loan amount is going to be. Sign here. And that's all they said. By the time I went to graduate school, they were starting to give some guidance. I had to sit through some videos that basically said, you know, you're going to have to pay this back, right? You know what I'm saying? So just in that, 4 or 5 year period, they had discovered that people were starting to default on loans, on student loans. And now it's like in the trillions of dollars of people defaulting on student loans because they don't hear what's really happening. So whatever your kid chooses to do, make sure that you understand what it is they're doing and they understand what it is they're doing. And they don't say, hey, I'll pay it back, but they're only ever going to be able to get they literally want to major in underwater basket weaving. If underwater basket weaving is on the rise, awesome. But if it's not, they might want to consider something else.
This is really wise, and it challenges our students to be mature, to decide, where do I want to go with my life? And if I don't know yet, it's okay to wait until you know. However, I want to let you all know it is 16 months that you have before you need to apply for the HOPE in Tennessee. So don't take off too long. I have a young friend who took off an extra 2 years, and she ended up missing out on HOPE, the HOPE scholarship. Now, she was able to get university scholarships and work study, and she's fine. But there is a timeliness to it. So it's helpful. And like Kim said, it's okay to go to college thinking, I'm going to do my gen eds because I know I'm going to major in something useful. And just explore and find out what you want that first year. And that's okay. But we did have a couple of questions here, and I'd like y'all to think of questions for us. And one, I know Missy has a comment on the CLEP. Someone had asked, do you have any experience with CLEP? And I thought, Missy, your insights were useful, if you'd like to explain.
Okay. So my son he wants to be an orthopedic surgeon. So he's like, I want to take anatomy and dual enrollment. And he had already taken biology at home in the homeschool. And so they're telling him he has to take biology before he can take anatomy. And he's like, I don't want to waste my time. So he said, I'll just do the CLEP test. And so he studied, he took the CLEP test. You don't have to get 100% on it. I'm trying to remember how much. I think it's like, you just have to pass it with 50 or 70 or something like that. It's not a high number that you have to get. But anyway, it's like once, I think it's 50, but you'll have to look it up to make sure because it's been a while back. but he passed it and he got a credit for the class, but not a grade. And then he was allowed to go on and take the anatomy classes because he did that CLEP test. So it actually can help you if you, like for instance, in some of the Georgia schools, you can actually start dual enrolling in your sophomore year. Like Dalton State allows them to start enrolling in dual enrolling in the sophomore year. And if they want to have a degree or something, some of these kids are graduating with an associate's degree and a high school diploma at the same time. And if you're on a track for a certain thing that you want to do, then it allows them to do that, to kind of fast track it, basically, so that they don't waste their time repeating a subject that you know that you did a good job teaching, and you know that they know what they know. And so it's just kind of a fast track for them to be able to go on and pursue the things that they really like.
Yeah.
That's good.
I saw one of the questions over here about being a Tennessee resident going to a Georgia school like Covenant. I think that do Tennessee scholarships apply there? Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. I think the Hope Scholarship will consider it at least. I don't know about the Tennessee Promise Scholarship. So I think there are certain conditions that you just have to call and ask. If you're a Tennessee resident, it might travel with you up to a certain point, but like it might not go, it might be miles, like a certain number of miles away. I think I've heard in the past that Covenant is one where it will apply, I think, but you would maybe talk to the Hope Scholarship people or talk to the Covenant admissions people. So
That's good. And if you know your student is interested in a particular college, talk to financial aid early and find out what the ropes are. That really helps a lot.
yep.
Yeah.
You might be interested in knowing that there are colleges out there that you can really go to mostly for free. There are actually free colleges out there. If your child, there's one in I'll have to look some of them up. I know that there's one, I can't remember what it's called now, but it used to be called School of the Ozarks in near Branson, Missouri. That they will, your child will have to have work study and there are certain parameters, but their goal is to make college doable for everyone. If your child doesn't mind going to Missouri, there's an art school in New York City that is pretty much free. And I'm not sure how they apply loans or whatever, but if your child is good at art, they might want to look into that. My neighbor down the street, a friend of mine, her brother went there, actually. Gosh, I cannot remember what it's called, but I'll tell you what, he is absolutely, it's an art school, and he is absolutely making a fortune right now. He and his company, he lives in New York City and actually just got married, is getting married maybe right now as we speak, actually. But he's a graphic designer, and he actually made a pixelated camouflage that has been bought by the United States government. Like the use of his design has been bought by the United States government, they made something with about a shield going on in the back of a helmet, a military helmet, and the Australian government bought that. And you can find him, if I could remember any of this stuff, my friend would be able to tell you, of course, Crye, C-R-Y-E something. But it's a deal, and he went to school for free. When he got his bachelor's degree, he went to school for free and is now quite wealthy from what he's done with his art degree since then. So it's possible to go for free.
Someone asked about what it's like on campus right now. And I have a daughter who dual enrolled last year, but didn't because of COVID. it just seemed too difficult for her at her maturity level. I have a son at UTC this semester, and all of his courses are online. I teach English in person at UTC, so I can tell you what it's like for those students, but half the class attends in person and the other half Zoom in, and then we switch for the other day. And the kids who love being with people on campus are very disappointed. It's just so hard with COVID this year. So I don't know if some people might choose a gap year because of COVID. I just don't know. But the colleges are trying to make it as fun as possible. They have special things in the cafeteria. They're always sending out messages for Zoom meetings. They're teaching line dancing by Zoom. So they're trying to overcome, but it is difficult.
I always find it strange that these kids who have, like, we're seeing like some of the first generations of kids who have grown up using the internet. Like even my older son at the age of 21 didn't exactly grow up using the internet, but my younger son has pretty much grown up using the internet. He took a gap semester because he wasn't sure. He's like, I don't want my first experience with college to be online. But now he found out about this, getting this scholarship. He's like, well, rats, now I guess I have to go. I said, maybe. Or you'll lose a scholarship, and not just a scholarship, but your ability to get the scholarship again in the future. So he will be going to college at Chat State in the fall and is likely to transfer to an art school at some point in his college career. But my older son and my daughter's again at UTC in public administration, getting her master's degree in public administration. She has all her classes online, and every now and again she'll stomp out of her room and be like, this is just stupid. She doesn't like pull any punches when she has an opinion that way. And my older son does not like it. He doesn't really like the online stuff either. But I'm like, but it's gonna pass. It's either gonna pass or you're gonna get used to it. One of the two. I mean, it's probably not gonna be anything other than that. It's either gonna, COVID-19 is, we're gonna get it under control, to the point that everyone believes it's under control, and they're gonna let you go back to school, or they're not, and you're gonna get used to doing it this way. But kids are they're remarkably personal for, like, personal for people who have largely grown up on the internet. And I'm just like, so what's the deal? It's like, okay, if you want to do it, but not if somebody makes you. I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So
we have a question about the Honors College.
Mhm.
And my students, some of my kids did participate in the Honors College. They are restructuring this year. So there are going to be what's called Innovation in Honors Scholars, and there's going to be Brock Scholars. And both are very good programs. The Brock Scholars historically have had more funding. However, they also have usually a combined history and English course at the beginning that most of these kids have already tested out of. So in other words, they end up retaking courses that they already have grades in. However, the Innovation in Honors students can use the credits they already have and just take off from there. So it's kind of a little easier option. The funding is not as high, but both groups are excellent. And the reason our last 3 students have participated is you meet other students who love to learn. So I think it's valuable just for that, to have a community of scholars.
Joyce,
Yeah.
Is that just for incoming freshmen, or can you transfer into Honors College?
You can transfer into Honors with the Innovation in Honors. Brock's, you have to start as a freshman, but Innovation in Honors is open to anybody. And you can even attend UTC for 2 years and then apply. So, and they both have, yeah.
Sorry. I wanted to say something about on campus. Our son is actually in the dorms on campus in New York. So kind of a different situation, but I know that a lot of colleges are doing it this way. He has like his roommate, he can have a mask off with the roommate, and several, they call it a cohort, and it's several rooms with near his room. They can all meet together without masks. But then he goes to classes with masks on. A few of his classes are online only. And so he's making life work a long way from home in a dorm on a campus. So it's still possible with the things that are happening with COVID. So I just wanted to put that out there.
They do have kids in the dorms at UTC, don't they?
Yes, they do. And they have a similar cohort idea.
Yeah.
Yes. And they monitor very closely.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so far they've done well.
Yes, they do testing, COVID testing every few weeks, and kind of keep a lot of rules in place. But it's like you said, it's working out very well for them.
Yeah.
Yep.
Are there any other questions from those who are here? It will help everyone if you think of some questions for us. And I will just mention, Kim has offered to meet one-on-one with those who would like to just talk about your particular student. So you can contact me for information, and there's just a lot of different things to consider, but I just want to put that out there as well. So any questions? Yeah. All right. And keep thinking of questions for our presenters. Do you have anything else you'd like to share? Let's see. Oh, all the applying is during the senior year, and that is correct. It's good to think about it while your kids are juniors. But if you have a student who's a senior this year, we do want to encourage you to apply early. And it's okay to do a scattershot. Just pick, 3 colleges, kind of like Missy was talking about, a safety college and an Ivy League, or, just try. But if you get those applications in early, then you get early feedback on the scholarships they will offer and financial packages, and then they can make an informed decision. So that's why we're holding this in early October.
Right. I also think that that the parents and the children should look at the schools and the type of schools that they are. Are they a research school? Are they a liberal arts school? Because there's differences in how that school is going to approach education, where your liberal arts schools focus more on a kind of classical themes and objectives, and they're usually smaller schools. And then your research schools usually have bigger campuses and bigger communities, and they focus more on the research. So that's another thing to consider when you're looking for a school that fits your needs.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is to look for the need blind and the zero loan packages. And the guarantee to meet all demonstrated need. That's really important if you don't want to go in debt.
I'm putting that here, need blind and zero loan packages.
Right, and have them have a guarantee to meet all demonstrated needs, because then the school will either offer some kind of package, they'll offer you a package that includes not only, the FAFSA, but also they will offer a scholarship or looking to help you look into different grants and stuff that will help pay for it. So when the student is done, they don't start their adult life with a huge amount of loans. And I think that's one of the main things. You want to get a good education, but you don't want to saddle your child with something they're going to be paying for years and years and years to come, because that kind of puts them at a disadvantage starting off in their adult life.
Yes. And don't be concerned much anyway if your child comes to you and says, I don't want to go to college, I want to get this kind of training, I want to get a 2-year nursing degree, or I want to get which is different than college. I mean, there are nursing degrees that you get when you go to college, and you go to college at the same time, but then there are also nursing degrees that you get just going through a nursing program that don't have all that, a lot of that other college-y stuff. Or if they want to be a mechanic, that's perfectly fine, or HVAC stuff. My husband is a restaurant manager. He's like, Usually when we call the HVAC people, the air conditioning people in, they leave with $10,000 in their pocket just for simple things. So, I mean, that's not the average worker, that's usually the owner, but still, HVAC people make a lot of money. They do. And so be open when your child says, or if your child says, I think I don't want to go to college, I think I want to do something else. And, you know, that's okay. It is. It's really okay. You know, you don't want your kid to be saddled with a lot of debt just starting out in life.
That's good. And we had a question about FAFSA. You can sign on and then save your work and go off again. And the website tells you what to have with you. There's like 7 things before you start, but one is your completed tax forms, or you can link to the IRS to complete it. But one useful thing for some of you who will someday have 2 kids in college is after you finish the first child's FAFSA, it gives you the option to import all that information for the second child. So just be looking for that, because that will save you a lot of time.
Jennifer has a question. How do colleges view students who might not test well on the ACT, SAT, yet have taken maybe 15 to 18 hours of college classes with A's and B's? So you're talking dual enrollment, Jennifer? You're muted. You're muted.
Okay. Yes, yes. For instance, my son, he's taken a couple classes, but he's also, he's taking a class at Chattanooga State, and he's taken a couple at the ASU, earned admission, with the, and good grades. He hasn't taken the ACT yet, but, I was just curious, like if a kid goes in with stellar college credit grades, isn't the ACT just a reflection of how the student might perform in college, or, where
yes, a lot of educators think the ACT and the SAT are worthless. So
right.
I'll just tell you that. But unfortunately, colleges use it. So it's worth taking the test and maybe taking it a couple times so you can get better at it. Right. But your student will do well on those tests based on having had the experience of these other courses. I think he'll be pleased that he'll do well. But there are some students who need more time testing. And if you have a student with that situation, you could look into requesting more time. Okay. I have one friend who successfully did that. It's actually very difficult, but
you have to be like diagnosed with like a learning.
You have to be diagnosed, yes. Yeah. But I've talked to people in admissions, and they say we often allow people to come in with lower SAT or ACT scores based on having these other successful classes or their other, extracurriculars and other things that give evidence.
But remember, it's not just the getting into college that use those test scores. It's also getting those scholarships. Right. Like the Hope Scholarship. That's all I know that'll get you in. If your child is public schooled or private schooled, like official public school, they can use the test scores or their grade point averages, but they don't let homeschoolers do that. They make homeschoolers either do, have one of the 2 test scores, but they have to equal. It's either 21 on the ACT or the equivalent of a 21 on the SAT. And if you take the SAT, make sure that you have the current ACT to SAT score concordance comparison chart, because there are comparison charts out there that have nothing to do with the ACT or the SAT, and sometimes they're wrong. And also, they updated the SAT back 2 years ago in 2018, and so the SAT is a little bit different than it used to be. It used to be that on the SAT that when you got wrong answers, they counted that against you. And now, what it basically meant was that the ACT, it was easier to just guess at answers. So like you're running out of time in the English section and you've got like 6 more questions to answer and you have like 30 seconds. So you just start guessing at them and marking. That worked for the ACT, but it didn't work for the SAT because they would count wrong answers against you. Now they don't. They do it. They score more like the ACT. So they changed that comparison chart. But if you look up if you take the SAT and you look up a comparison chart, because all of them are going to say the ACT is much more popular, so you're only ever going to get this like 21 on the ACT kind of thrown at you, and you're going to read that everywhere. But realize that there's also an SAT equivalent to that ACT test score. But you need to make sure that you're on that whoever is telling you, oh yeah, your kid got an 1100 on the SAT, that equals a 24, and 1100 equals a 22. Okay, and there's a range. So like maybe 1020 to 1060 is all of those scores on the SAT would equal a 20 on the ACT or a 21 on the ACT. So there's like a range of scores in the SAT that would equal the same thing, just one score on the ACT. Does that make any sense at all? It probably will if you look up one of their comparison charts, but make sure that you look up like the official ACT comparison chart or the official SAT comparison chart from the companies who administer those two tests. So that would be from the ACE, like, you know, you'd see ACT in the website address when you're looking at the comparison chart, or you'd see, is it the College Readiness Board? Who I forget who does who administers
SAT,
the SAT.
College Board.
College Board. So you'd see College Board on that comparison chart that you're looking at up in the web address. Anything else, if it's Princeton Review, that might not necessarily be the real comparison. Like our school is Gateway, and they had written something on the paperwork that they sent with Adam's diploma. And I called them about that, and they were saying that they were saying that he got a lower score on the ACT than he actually got because he took the SAT and they were using the old comparison chart. But he actually got a much higher score on his comparison score on his SAT. They just didn't know it because they were using the wrong chart. So it's a 2018 chart right now, but
Yeah.
make sure you're looking at the ACT or the SAT websites when you look at those comparison charts, depending on which you're trying to compare.
If you take the SAT subject test, though, a wrong answer is deducted.
Does it still detect on the
Just the subject one.
really?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I was glad to hear the SAT change that to go with the ACT, because if your student is at the end of their time, they can go back in and bubble up, and get a chance of getting some of those at the end correct and helping their score.
And there are schools out there actually who no longer require you taking the student taking those tests to get in.
Yes.
Sometimes
California schools are dropping it, for example.
really?
Yes.
I know that the University of the South doesn't, or they didn't for a while require that test, but they'll kind of make they'll take your student through their paces on the application. Like you'll have to write this big essay and stuff like that. So they have their ways of kind of getting around it, but
Right. Or they'll have their own test that they administer to evaluate how your student is doing.
Yep.
And like a lot of them will do for math, they'll use that to place the child and whether or not they need like an algebra math going in. And then again, there's also in-house ACT and SATs at some of the schools. And so that is an ACT or an SAT that will not be able to be used at any other school. It's just used at that one particular school for their evaluation.
Yeah.
Also, we had a question about entering as a freshman. UTC is a good example, but a lot of colleges have renewable scholarships that start with incoming freshmen. If you have more than a certain number of credits, they consider you a transfer student. So if you want to be able to get one of those freshman scholarships that are renewable for 4 years, you don't want to bring into college more than about 24 credits. And it differs on the college, so you should talk to the particular college. But basically, you can do dual enrollment and you can do CLEP and you can do AP, but you can choose which ones you want to bring in. If you want your child to be considered a freshman, they may only need one course to be a sophomore. But if you want those renewable scholarships, just have them come in as a freshman, and then you can basically maintain them by having a certain grade point average every year. And it's about a B. It's about 3.2 for most of them.
I saw the question about accommodations with ACT testing, and I have some experience with that. Now, Matthew researched this, and he's like, you can get rid of some of the time limits if you can prove like ADHD or ADD. So you can look into that. But Matthew had back surgery, and he had to go in and take an ACT that was scheduled. They allowed him to bring in pillows and stuff like that to sit on, and different things that he could use to make himself more comfortable. So I don't know all the accommodations that they have, but I do know that he said that there was something with the ADHD and the ADD, and I do know our experience with the pillows. So if you look into it, you could probably widen on that, but I do know that they do have some things that they try to accommodate.
That is excellent. Well, I'm going to try to respect everyone's time and end on time. But if you have questions, I've put my email in the chat, and I can share them with Kim and Missy. And if you'd like to consult with Kim, I can also get you connected. So I hope that this has been helpful. I so appreciate Kim and Missy for helping us with these. There's just so many different questions. And I think this may help a lot of people. Is everyone okay if I share the recording with others? I know our participants were very kind to share their questions as well. And if it's okay, there's some who couldn't be here today. They've already emailed me and asked if they could watch the recording. So if you're okay with that, just put yes in the chat, and then we'll make it available to them. But thank you all so much. We really appreciate it. And we may actually do another one if there's a lot more questions. So we'll keep in touch, okay? All right, thanks.
Thank you all for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Yay.
Yay.
I'm just seeing if we have any more questions that we didn't answer, but it looks like everybody gave permission, so that's good. So, yay. All right.
I think it was pretty good.
I thought it went really well. What a treasure trove of information.